All right. So, right where you are sitting, I want you to pair off with either like two to three people just right next to you, okay? We're going to do a little kind of group thing before we get started. And really what we're going to do is we're going to play church together, okay? So if you are sitting around two or three people, you can play church, and I got some questions to help guide us, play church.
Imagine a church where every member is passionately, wholeheartedly, and recklessly calling the shots.
I don't know who sets the worship center temperature, but why does it have to be so cold?
Why do you have to be so right? Heated chairs are now being installed.
This one wants a small church, but I'm afraid if it's too small, they're gonna make me volunteer like crazy. And I don't stack chairs, do I?
Makes total sense. Join now and we'll let you decide the size of our church.
We're millennials, and we want a church that...
Say no more. Any requests you have will be granted immediately.
Parking is horrible. It takes me almost 6 minutes to get from my car to the building. Oh.
It's going to take me 6 seconds to tell you a valet service is on the way.
My pastor's preaching, it's all over the map. I say, stick with the books of the Bible. We should be only exegetical.
Okay, next week we start John chapter 1, verse 1. And we'll even start pronouncing that word the way you said it.
Hey, I'd like the sermon to be no longer than 30 minutes.
How does 15 minutes sound?
Hey, anybody willing to go 15 should be willing to go to 10.
You drive a hard bargain. But from now on, 5-minute sermons it is.
Now you're talking.
Me Church, where it's all about you.
All right. So, I hope you all it was a simple exercise, but out of my own curiosity, really the question that I was most interested in was the last one. So what were certain qualities that you said you wanted members of the Dream Church to possess? You can just shout them out quickly. Motivated? Commitment? Dependability? Is that a word? Dependability? Yeah. Okay, sorry. I make words up all the time, so sometimes you just gotta check them. Huh? Accepted. All right, cool. How many of you saw the video and be like, yeah, when valet service started? Okay. Sorry, no valet service coming up. But I will start off with a story. So as you can see, I went and got a haircut over the week. And long overdue, but when I called the normal place that I go and get my hair cut, my hairstylist had left. This is, I know. You know how hard it is to keep this look up? It is unbelievable. But not only did she leave, but this is the third stylist I've had leave, from Great Clips. And so as I'm just again, and it's so challenging to find somebody who just knows me and what I like and how I like my hair done, so that when I go home, I'm not sent back saying go fix this, okay? So it's really important for me to find a hairstylist that knows me over time, so also when I come back, I don't have to explain it's 4 on the top, 2 on the sides, kind of blending it, stuff like that. So if you want to give me a gift card, a $10 gift card to get a haircut, would be perfectly fine for Christmas, all right? But the idea is that having people stay somewhere long-term is really becoming a thing of the past. Tenure is something that we just don't see going on in society. When you look, actually, the average job retention is probably somewhere around 3 to 5 years, and then you're moving on to something else. And a lot of it has to do with in search of what fits me. It's in search of what fits me. I have a certain schedule, I have certain relationships that I want to be able to keep and uphold and nurture and things like that. And so, what we're seeing in society is I will just keep on bouncing around until I figure out what's best for me. Your vacation vacation package, your bonuses and benefits and all those things. Like, that's what's important, which is very different from actually the baby boomer generation, which is anybody born from 1946 through 1964, because the boomers had a very, very different mentality. They were kind of the last generation that have actually are actually tenured in their jobs. They've been there forever. But the newer generation, the millennial generation, what we're seeing is that job retention is different. Because we hold different values. We want different things. We're looking for something. And actually, I did a little research, and the top 10 companies who are doing well are not the top richest companies, but the 10 best companies to work for are companies that have built a culture within the company that makes people want to stay, okay, for more than 3 to 5 years, because they have something that's attractive. While other companies are struggling to find tenure, but what comes, there's something that comes at the risk of high turnover. Whenever you have high turnover, you're losing something. And I'm going to jump over into the sports world, okay, because this is an easy way for me to explain this, all right? What does every NFL team want? Okay, yes, they want a quarterback, and that speaks near and dear to my heart as a Chicago Bears fan. All right, I'll tell you why. All right, but anyway, but teams at the end of the day, what they want to win. They want a championship. Okay, do they want just one championship? No, I mean, you could call us haters, but we all can't stand the Patriots, right? They've been winning forever, and it's kind of annoying. But why? Okay, why? Because they have a coach who has been there forever, they have a quarterback who is very good, but who has been there forever, and they have a staff and a system of coaches that have been there, that they've lost, but they've also won. And in the tenure, in kind of that longevity of key pieces, they've been able to build a sense of trust. They've been able to build a sense or a system that works for their football team, so that even when new players come in, they're still able to compete at such a high level. All right? I'm going to rag on myself. As a Chicago's Bear fan, okay, I found out this stat and it broke my heart, okay? But it explains why we haven't won anything in the last 30 years. All right? 1985, we were deemed one of the best teams ever in the history of the NFL, the 85 Bears, who won. Since 1985 till now, it's been 31 football seasons, and we have cycled through 32 quarterbacks. Somehow we have managed to cycle through more quarterbacks than years played, all right? Which is why we are what we are right now, okay? It's not a good team, but we're still going to come to Baltimore next week and beat you guys, all right? But anyway, but the idea that we're trying to get at is that having people around, okay, is important. And having the same people around over time is important. But what is keeping us from being able to build that kind of longevity, as we see it in the workforce, we see that it's a high turnover, and we even see in football teams and sports teams, it's a high turnover. Why? Because we're all racing against the clock. We all want to win, and win now, and win effectively, and do it. But history shows that when you have stability, when you have consistency, when you have commitment, over time, you build something that is sustainable in the long run. But what are we all racing against? We're racing against time. Because time is something that it's a double-edged sword for us. Because we're a generation and a society that has been groomed for maximal efficiency. We want things to be maximally efficient, all right? Why do we go and look for certain apps? Why? Because we think this app will make life more efficient, okay? We want something to be efficient. I want to expend the least amount of energy in the shortest amount of time and get the greatest results, all right? Bosses in the workforce, what do they want? They want maximal efficiency out of their employees. It's not wrong for a boss to want that, okay? But I would question, is it realistic for a boss to actually get that? But as a society, we have been groomed for maximal efficiency. Time is really important to us. And so in trying to be so efficient with all the different things that we juggle, we are more easily to kind of replace parts very quickly. Okay, this isn't working for me, I'll just take it out and try something new. All right? But when we kind of look, when we do that over and over and over, we miss out on the opportunity to experience something that is sustainable, something that is meaningful. And as human beings, one of the most meaningful things that we have are the relationships with each other. Okay? As human beings, one of the most meaningful things that we have are the relationships that we have with each other. Because, quickly to kind of jump back, when we were created, what were we created in the image of? God. How does God exist? In a Trinity. It's the most perfect relationship. And being made in that image, we were being made with this innate desire and need to be relational people. Okay? Which is why Adam needed Eve. Okay? And Eve needed Adam. Because they were created to be relational. But our time is divided among a myriad of relationships. Our time is divided among so many relationships. And depending on what stage or season in life you are, your time may be divvied up differently. Okay? All of us spend some time with God, whether it be like every day, multiple times a day, once a week, every 2 weeks. To some extent, we spend time with God. All right? We divvy up our time with God. If you're married, you have time with your spouse. All right? You got children, you're spending time with your children. You have extended family members, you spend time with your family members. If we all have friends, and so there's a certain amount of our time that is spent investing in the relationship of friends, which either would be at work or at school or neighbors and things like that. We now have a new category where we spend time developing relationships via social media. Okay? It's something that has just really worked into our schedule that is really it's here to stay, and we have to learn how to deal with it and deal with it appropriately. All right? But of all these relationships, a lot can be said, but there's one relationship that I really want to focus on today, which is the time that we spend with church. Okay? Not church the building, but church the person. Because as we said in our very first talk, sorry, I'm a couple slides behind, but as we said in our first talk, which is titled, Hello, My Name is Church, church isn't a building. Church is us, and we are people. And we collectively give this place that we will call SBSS a personality. The personality of SBSS, founded by God, is a cornerstone, but we're the personality. And hopefully we'd be sharing his traits and with anybody who comes, but collectively, we all have a relationship with church, the person. But whenever you have a system, so to speak, like church, which is comprised of people, and those people have relationships with each other, all right? Any sort of system has a mix of investors and takers. Any sort of system has a mix of people who invest and people who take. Let's kind of break from the church. Let's go to an example of family, all right? Every parent is mostly considered the investor, okay? Kids were takers, okay? Kids are takers, parents are investors. Every parent invests in their kid. In some way, shape, manner, or form, every parent invests in their kid. But how we invest in the child matters. How we invest in the child matters. All right? Because how we invest when they're young will determine the relationship that we have when they're older. what's the only thing that will tell us if how we have invested was right? Time. Time's the only thing that will tell us when we look at the adult relationship between parent and child if how we invested when they were young was right or not. So how we invest matters. There are investors and there are takers, but if you're an investor, how you invest matters. Okay? If I choose to invest in my kid with very scattered time with them, the chance that I'm going to build a sustained and healthy relationship on into adulthood is slim. Why? Because I've just made quick investments. I'll take you to McDonald's, here's Happy Meal. Be quiet. All right? I've given them something. I've invested. I've fed them. All right? But is that the sort of investment that I need to be making in my child if later on I want to have a good and healthy relationship with him? No. So how I choose to invest matters. As a church, okay, is made up of people who invest and people who take. If we're honest with ourselves, church is filled with investors and takers. Who do we traditionally label as the investors? Okay, praise, fine. Okay. Servants, okay? Specifically Sunday school servants. Okay, well there, we'll say those are the investors of the church. Okay? I think that's true, but I think it's also narrow-minded. Because I'll give you some examples as to why I think those who we would look at as being takers, in their mind, are investors. Okay? Who here has gone to a retreat and said, I went to a retreat, they kept on telling me, go, go, go. I went to the retreat, wasn't that good. I invested my time into a retreat, wasn't that good. Okay? Parents keep on saying, go to Sunday school, go to Sunday school, go to Sunday school. I'm like, Mom, I went to Sunday school. It was so boring. Okay? I invested my time in Sunday school and it was so boring. All right? We invest in an outing. All right? We invest in an outing because somebody said brownies were coming. Oh. Sorry. Somebody said brownies we're going to get to see, have brownies halfway through the hike, but instead of brownies, hard-boiled eggs came.
True story.
All right? True stories.
You can't make that one up.
You can't make that one up. And you can't plan for that one. But anyway, we invest in outings, but we say it was a lame outing. There's no brownies for there. All right? Some of us have invested in serving, but it hasn't gone well. So I'm moving on to a different service. Or some have invested to just come to liturgy. Some said I'll come to liturgy. I haven't been in a while. Let me take time out of my Sunday and I'll invest in come. But nobody said hi to me. Nobody greeted me. Nobody cared for me. Everybody here is investing in some way or another. Everybody here is investing. Some of us have invested and it didn't go out, come out well. We didn't find the return that we were looking for from church. The retreat was bad, Sunday school was bad, talk after church was bad, liturgy was a mess. I came, I invested. Forget it. I don't know what I'm going to gain from it. So, see you later. Why? Because we're groomed for maximal efficiency. We're coming, we're investing time, but we want something from it. And when we don't get it, too frequently what happens is we slide out the back door. Okay, we slide out the back door because we're groomed for maximal efficiency as people. St. Paul said something about this. He said in 2 Corinthians 9:6, he said, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one give as he proposes in his heart. Sowing is such a great word. that St. Paul used, because sowing is tied to the idea of a harvest. All right? And harvesting, and sowing and harvesting back in the biblical days, and even now, just in different parts of the country, but it's how people lived. It's what they would sow all season long. Good weather, bad weather. They would sow all season long in hopes that the fruit this year would bring what they needed to survive until next season. But they never knew what exactly would come, but they knew what exactly they needed to do. They needed to get up every morning and water, and get up and throw fertilizer, which was, I don't know what it was in that time, but they probably did fertilizer, okay? But the point is they were there and they were committed to the process. And they knew it would bring fruit, okay? And not always every season was it the fruit that they wanted, or was the harvest as great as they would have hoped for. But they knew that they were going to sustain by this process of sowing, where every season I'm going to go, I'm going to prepare the land, and then I'm going to lay the seeds, and then I'm going to water, and then I'm going to water, and then I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to water. And if there's a drought, I got to figure out how to water some more in order to finally get to the harvest, hoping that the harvest would be great. But even if it wasn't great, what they do next season, they sowed. They sowed. I'm sure there were farmers back in those days who quit, and they had to figure out something else. But there are many who continue to sow year after year. We do the same things here. But we sow a little bit different. Times have changed, farming techniques have changed, and I'm not going to go into how we farm presently, okay? What I want to talk about is they put a seed in the ground, okay? They had to feed the seed. They had to feed the seed. That same seed that they had to feed back then is the same seed that we put in the ground now, that we have to do the same thing. We have to go through the same steps. We have to be committed to watering, we have to be committed to fertilizing, we have to be committed to waiting. The techniques can change, but the time that it takes to grow in order to reach the harvest doesn't. Similarly, in a church, okay, relationships are the seed. The relationships are the seed. We put the seed in the ground, we have to do the same things. We have to feed it, we have to water, we have to wait. We have to weather the bad seasons and then come back and do it again. Our techniques can change. We use email and social media today. They didn't use email and social media back then. We use different techniques. But sometimes our techniques have changed our idea of what it is to sow, and sow patiently and sow bountifully. Why? Because the seed is about a relationship. We said that church is about people. People are about relationships. The need that we have as people hasn't changed over the centuries. All of us need each other. All of us need family, friends. We need to help each other. So as everybody here has invested, that's great. But have you invested with a sower's mentality? Or have you invested with, I want maximal efficiency out of my couple hours at church? St. Paul also says, brings up the word purpose. He challenges us to think how we sow, but then he takes another angle and he says, what's your purpose behind it? What are you looking for out of sowing? Because if you don't know what you're looking for, when it hits you in the face, you ain't going to know it. So you have to know what's the purpose behind your sowing. And the reason why St. Paul said this was because there were churches in those times where people just tried to kind of live off, the fat of the church. All right? And actually in 2 Thessalonians was, the church in Thessalonica was the example. and where people just kind of were lazy and just trying to live off of kind of the growth of the church, the finances, and all those things. That people were trying to live off of it. And St. Paul in 2 Thessalonians said this. He said, "If anyone will not work, neither shall he eat. For we hear that there are some who walk among you in a disorderly manner, not working at all, but are busybodies." Some of us can be busybodies around the church. Okay? But what are we trying to get? We have to ask ourselves inside that, what am I trying to get from this community? What am I trying to get from all the relationships, the potential? We have a lot of potential here. What are we trying to get out of these relationships? What St. Paul was saying, GiGo. What you give in is what you get out. Okay? He was challenging the churches to sow and sow bountifully. Or, if you sow sparingly, you'll reap sparingly. In relationships, when we give very little to relationships, we get very little in relationships. But when we give a lot to relationships, and we sow relationships, we'll reap the beauty of relationships. But again, what I was saying is that how we sow matters. How we sow these relationships matter. All right? So, not all investments that we make are necessarily the right investments in church, okay, or in the body of believers. And I'll give you some general life examples. All right? If I'm sowing with my kid, and I give my kid a whole bunch of cash money, and he's almost 6 years old. Have I given to my kid? Yes. But have I given what my kid needs? No. He doesn't need money. He needs me. He needs a relationship. All right? If my marriage is struggling because I'm spending so much time at work, say, okay, I'll work from home. Have I done something to increase my time at home? Sure. But have I done what is good for the relationship? Not exactly. All right? If my grades are slipping in biochem, I need to study more, I need to study more, I need to study more, okay? I'm going to study philosophy. Am I going to help my biochem grade? No. How we sow matters, and how we sow should be guided by the who and the what, okay? How we sow should be guided by the who and the what. So putting this idea of sowing into context is really important. And of course, our context today is church. And so when we're talking about church as a person needs another person. And when two people sow in a relationship over time, all right, and are patient enough, what do we get? We find a sense of belonging. We find someone to care for me when I need help. When I'm down, I know who to call. When my hope, when I'm struggling to find hope in the certain situations of life, I'll find it in a relationship. When I'm kind of drifting away and I haven't been here and things like that, if I built the relationship, I was so into the relationship, I'll find that phone call, calling and bringing me back in. When I'm happy and I just get engaged or finally pass my boards or whatever it is, I share that joy with somebody. When we sow relationships, okay, there's so much to be gained. But you know what the irony of church is? I may get a different perspective of it because I get a chance to talk and to really, as people open up. But I can't tell you the number of people who come to church and say, I'm lonely. I'm lonely. I feel like I'm floating in this world and nobody's around. And it's like, it's mind-boggling because here we are as a church, and church is comprised of people, and people need relationships, but yet we're sitting next to each other, we're 2 inches apart from each other, but we're so distant from each other in a place that we need to be extremely close to each other. To me, that's the irony of church. That we come together in and out, week in, week out, this season, that season, Thanksgiving potluck coming up, Christmas, all these things. We celebrate all these cool things together. But even though we celebrate all these cool things together, there are still many people who come to church, sit next to somebody in airline seating sometime, and they feel, I'm so distant. I'm so lonely. So are we sowing the right way? How we sow in a church community matters. So I'm going to offer up 3 different ways that I think that if we sow with this in mind, okay, that we would see a change within our community. I don't think they're easy ways to sow, and I don't think that they're not quick ways, they're not quick fixes. If we start doing it like not by next week and we're going to be like, oh, hugging each other, no, I don't expect that. All right, but hugs are great. All right, but if we're really going to overcome what everybody is feeling, not everybody, but a lot of people are feeling of loneliness, I think we need to challenge ourselves to sow this family a little bit differently. So there's 3 ways that I want to suggest. Sow the gift of yourself. Sow the gift of yourself. As a community, we're blessed by a variety of people. And each of us has been so amazingly made and crafted. Problem is that too often we don't look at ourselves and see somebody who is amazingly crafted by God. We see somebody who's a failure. We see somebody who has a temper. I see a lot of negativity in myself. And so, I don't want people to see that. So I come, I put up, hi guys, good to see you again. I missed you. How was the hiking trip? I heard the brownies were great. Right? We put up a veneer. We put up a fake wall. Because we don't see ourselves as gifts. But our Father in heaven sees differently. He looks at us. He says, I made that person. That person in their strengths and in their weaknesses and in their failures and in their ugly times, I crafted them. He's a proud Father of all of us. There's not a single one of us that He doesn't look down on and say, that's not my creation. He looks down on us, all of us. He says, that's mine. But can we come to this community and see that we are a gift? That when you're not here, we are not as good as a community as we could be. Because you're a gift to all of us. In a book that we read as a community 2 years ago, okay, Life of the Beloved, Henry Nouwen had this quote. He said, our greatest fulfillment lies in the giving of ourselves to others. Our humanity comes to its fullest bloom in giving. We become beautiful people when we give whatever we can give. A smile, a handshake, a kiss, an embrace, a word of love, a present, a part of our life. All of our life. It's a beautiful thing to share yourself with somebody else. St. Paul said in Corinthians, but the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. It says we believe that as believers in this church, the Holy Spirit resides in all of us, being perfectly, craftedly made for the profit of all. It means the gifts that you have, the smile that you have, the embrace that you have, the talents that you have are a gift for everybody. And in sharing your life, you actually experience life. David was, King David was probably one of the greatest examples that we have of somebody who embraced who he was. That even though he was a king and fell into adultery and made a lot of mistakes, David was true to himself, and he was true to himself in the Psalms. And so not only was he a great king, but he has blessed us for generations to come because he gave the gift that God had given him to write, to sing, to compose, to express. And now it's a gift for all of us. So giving and sowing the gift of yourself. Sow from your brokenness. Now this is a tough one, right? This is a really tough one because what people want and need out of a community and a sense of belonging and fellowship, this is what people need and want out of a community, is a sense of belonging and fellowship. But why do we need that sense of belonging and fellowship? Because all of us are hurting inside. All of us are broken in some way or another. All of us are struggling with some sort of sin. There's not a single person here in this room or in the Bible, except for Christ, who did not struggle, who did not fall, who did not struggle with depression or have suicidal ideations or think that they were the only one left on this earth worshiping God. They all struggled with something. We're all struggling with something too. And it's because we're all struggling and we're all broken that we all need each other. Because it's a really lonely place to sit there and be broken and struggling with your sin or struggling with whatever relationship you have and to just be alone. But in order to not be alone, that means I got to come forward with who I am and hope that I'm accepted. The thing is, we're all in the same boat. But yet we all wonder if people really saw who I was, would they still love me? But if we all came and were broken, we would all experience a lot of love. Also out of that book, Life of the Beloved, he said this in the chapter on brokenness. Our brokenness reveals something about who we are. Our suffering and pains are not simply bothersome interruptions of our lives. Rather, they touch us in our uniqueness and our most intimate individuality. The way I am broken tells you something unique about me. The way you are broken tells me something unique about you. If we all knew something unique about each other, wouldn't that defeat loneliness? Wouldn't it allow us to come closer together? Wouldn't it allow us to experience what it is to be loved even though you feel ugly for what you do on the inside? When we share from the shattered pieces of our lives, there is great potential to experience great love and a great sense of community. When we take down our guard and we allow ourselves to be broken, I guarantee you somebody else sitting across from you will be encouraged to take down their guard. Because they realize we're not so different after all. We're actually quite the same. Uniquely the same. Unique in what we struggle with, but the same because we both struggle. So sowing from our brokenness. And I told you at the end of the liturgy why community groups are important. Because community groups provide a forum for us to begin to kind of bring down our guard. They allow us to kind of share, I really struggle with this, or I didn't do that the right way, or I did this and I'm still reaping the consequences of that decision. Doing that in a small group is much safer than doing it here. I don't expect anybody here to be oh, I'm broken. No, nobody's going to stand up here and say, oh, I'm broken. But when we do it in a smaller group, where we set certain parameters of confidentiality, okay, when we create a place for us to finally kind of leave this world, step into another world, and just kind of rest from having to hold everything together. That's a good place to be. That's a place where real relationships can happen. Because you can't have a real relationship without actually having the problem come to life. You have to be able to talk about the problem in order for there to be a real relationship. And so community groups is one of the ways that we want to encourage this community to lower our guard, to be broken, say it's okay. and know that you're not going to be judged because the person sitting next to you has a lot to lower to. So, sow from our brokenness. And the other thing is, sow with the sower's mindset. Yes, when you sow into this community, okay, it's an investment on your part. And I know that time is tight. Everybody's like dealing with so many different things, work and schedules and applying for jobs and, academics and, exam schedules, like the whole gamut. Kids, like everybody here is tight on time. I get it. Which is why we come to church and say, I want to invest and I want to get the most out of it, like really quick. But relationships, the seed of relationships, we can't make the seed go faster. A seed has to be sown. The same seed that they sowed back then, the same seed we're sowing now, and it just takes time. So we need to sow with the sower's mindset. You go to an event that doesn't have brownies. Hang on, they're coming, okay? At the next event.
Keep hanging on.
Don't worry. Next time we have an event, you say there are going to be brownies, I expect there to be brownies. All right? But again, like, when you invest and it doesn't turn out the way you expected, remember, you're sowing relationships. You're not sowing for maximal efficiency. Don't expect to be like, oh, I want a community that I love, and that I really feel like I can be myself, and that there's a sense of trust, and that there's mutual respect. All these great things that we as humans want and need to exist in. They're not going to happen when I invest and it doesn't go well, it's like, forget it. Sow with a sower's mindset in this community, with the people around you. Sow as if you're giving a gift of yourself. Sow from your brokenness. And there, I think over time, we will sow a family that you and I want to come back to every week. But we can't expect to have a family that we want to come back to that won't understand me. But nobody will ever understand you if you stay hidden, if you don't lower your guard, if you don't see yourself as a gift, if you don't participate in what we do over time. So what you give in is what you'll get out. St. Paul says, sow bountifully, and you will reap. Sow sparingly, and you'll reap sparingly from the relationships that we have the potential of making. St. Paul said to the Church of Philippians, I thank my God upon every remembrance of you always, in every prayer of mine, making request for you with all joy, for your fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. Fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now. There's a lot of time between when the church in Philippians started and to when St. Paul wrote this when he was in prison. From the first day until now, they sowed over time, a seed of fellowship. But can we sow as giving ourselves as a gift? Can we sow out of our brokenness? And can we sow with the sower's mindset? And I think we will become the big fat church family we hope to become. Any questions?
This is not about the ground. It's kind of it's kind of a tough question, but in my mind that I'm having a really hard time with. So sowing with the sower's mentality, or sowing out of brokenness, or a sower or a farmer sometimes will go broke one season, right? Then they'll go broke next season. Then they'll go broke again third season. Sometimes they run out. And then they don't have any more to invest the season after, right? So how do you invest if you have, I don't want to say nothing, but if you've gone broke? So how do you give if you have nothing, and then if you have a group of people that each have pretty much nothing? And I'm not saying that's what we have or anything, but I'm just saying when you get a bunch of broken people after a while, everybody's just like, I'm looking for someone to look for me, and if everybody has that mentality, then like, how do you pick back up?
That's a really good question. And like I've met people who do fall into that category. And that's a tough place to be, where like, you know, I can think of a conversation that I've had recently, just somebody who feels like they have been burned time and again from the relationships here in church. I think it's important that if we come across somebody like that, to speak words of encouragement and hope. Because that person is ultimately saying, like, I've lost hope in this sort of like family, okay? And I don't have the encouragement to come on. And in those situations, sometimes they do need special attention. They do need somebody to go out. We have to remember that it's God who sees that person. And at the end, God is responsible for them. And He's not going to, even though we can't see what He is doing, He doesn't leave people out. He doesn't like create something that is so precious and then just say, I got 50 billion other creations, like, let me just focus on them. He doesn't do that. He sees what we don't see. And those people who have just like been broken down, misled, disillusioned church experience, all these different things, I don't have an exact answer for you, but I will say I know God watches over them. And in His own way, and in His own time, He will extend a hand. Because it's what we've seen Him do in Scripture too. Especially if you look at the book of Judges. Like, these are, you know, the Israelites really struggled as a community. They kept on like breaking. But the Lord said something like, but I always left my hand stretched out to them. He does it to those people. When you meet those people, I think it's important to validate what they've gone through. To let them know that what they're feeling is real. And that the church isn't perfect. But just because it's not perfect doesn't mean we shouldn't keep pushing ourselves to continue to sow. I don't know if I've answered your question. I think it's a really tough question, but a very, very good question. Because we'll always meet people who have just been burned time and again, and have distanced themselves. And that's why, you know, in our mission statement, we challenge ourselves to be living the good news of Jesus Christ. And one of the ways that we live the good news of Jesus Christ is in how we interact with each other. What He tells disciples, they will know you by how you love one another. And so we have an opportunity as a young community to figure out, well, what sort of personality as a community are we going to take on? I would love to see us take on a personality of seeing each other as a gift, to, you know, working on bringing down the walls that separate us, that allow us to be broken and open. I think that's what a lot of people need, as a place to be themselves and to be cherished for themselves. But in cherishing brokenness, it's tough, because like we rub against each other. We have like fights and there's disagreements and different ways of viewing things. But that's why the sower's mentality is important. Is because when we disagree, when ministries like come and they fall apart, or things like that, things that naturally happen in any church community, we need the sower's mentality that I'm going to keep sowing, that I'm going to work, that I'm going to see myself as a gift, that I'm going to see my brokenness, and that allows me to like forgive and be forgiven. So the sower's mentality is important. Any other questions? Very good. If you have not signed up for a community group, please do so. Please do so. Even if one isn't in your area, but there are a couple people in your area, like, form a group. Let Sean know what day you're meeting, and we'll share with others. But community groups are an important way for us to really be and build those relationships. So I really want everybody here to be in a community group. If you haven't signed up for one, please go and do so before the end of the week, because we're going to start next week with Pathwalkers. Any other questions? All right, let's stand up and pray. May our Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, Lord God, amen. We thank you, Lord, for our blessings. Thank you, Lord, that you brought us here, and that you've given us an opportunity to build a family that cherishes each person, to build a family that understands what it is to be broken, to become a family where it is safe to be broken. And that doesn't come easy, Lord. It's going to take a lot of hard work on our part. And every member here has a responsibility of working on themselves. Lord, give us that mentality that St. Paul was saying, that we sow bountifully will reap bountifully. If we sow into the relationships of this community, in this church, we'll reap of the relationships. We'll reap of what it is to be loved. We'll reap what it is to be cared for, to not be judged, to be embraced when we're weak, picked up when we're down. I think that's the community that you have in mind for us. But help us to be active in that process. Keep us safe from this week until next week. And ask, Lord, that you would truly bless us as we start these community groups next week. And that may be a place where we find comfort, where we find encouragement in one another. Through the intercessions of all your saints who are patient from the beginning, hear us as we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For Christ Jesus our Lord, and thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory. Now the love of God the Father, the grace of his only God, Son, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and the gift of the Holy Spirit, and all of our peace, the Lord be with you.